Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You students of the Civil War know that many citizens of the southern states preferred to remain in the Union until Abraham Lincoln won the 1860 presidential contest. Viewing his election as a hostile takeover of the U.S. government, they embraced secessionist ideas and the formation of an independent and sovereign nation. This is a common narrative. I've encountered it when researching men who transformed from Unionist to secessionist and became soldiers and sailors for the Confederate nation. But what about the Northerners? Did they go through a similar transformation? If so, how did that work? Today, I found the story of a Northern man, a New England minister, whose transformation or turning point was the bombardment of Fort Sumter. Before Southern forces fired on the U.S. garrison in South Carolina's Charleston harbor, he supported letting the Southern states go, letting them form an independent nation. After Sumter, he preached the use of force to subjugate and bring them back into the Union. He's pictured here, and his name is Andrew Leet Stone. Connecticut-born, Yale-educated, he's a minister, supported the abolition of slavery from the pulpit of the Park Street Congregational Church in Boston, Massachusetts. On April 4th, 1861, he addressed secession and slavery in a noontime sermon at his church. A local newspaper reported he took the ground that rather than submit to all the demands of slavery, the North had better separate from the South. The speaker presented his views in a forcible and impressive manner, at the point where he said that if two confederacies were formed, the North, rather than aid in slavery extension, should remain dissevered from the South. There was clapping of hands in all parts of the House. 8 days later came the bombardment of Fort Sumter, and with it, the opening of the Civil War. A little more than a week later, on Sunday, April 21st, Stone's sermon titled "The War and the Patriot's Duty" revealed that transformation. So captivated was the congregation by Stone's words that day, they printed, with his permission, the manuscript as a 24-page booklet, which was widely circulated. I want to share excerpts to give you a flavor of the sermon and the intensity of Stone's passion and the depths of his transformation over the course of days. So here's where we start. From the horizon, he spoke, that has been darkening the day for months past. As our eyes have looked southward, there have shot up at last the lurid clouds of war. Out of the bosom of the cloud, we have seen the sulphurous flashes and heard the crash of the thunders, and know that the bolts of doom have fallen. The curtain that hung before the scene in that southern harbor, where one little patriot band stood at bay, ringed about with a core of iron-mouthed batteries, rose, and the gaze of 30 millions of people in this land was fastened upon the opening of the great tragedy. Against the brave old flag and its few defenders, traitorous and rebel hands launched the missives of death and destruction. For a while it waved amid clouds and smoke, and its champions gave back the stormy salutation of the hostile leaguer, 80 against 7,000. And then upon the well-defended and blackened ruin came down the stainless bunting, a martial shroud for the lost fortress. And over the land, from city to city and home to home, waking the echoes of every hillside and every hearthstone, uttered by the lightning's fiery tongue, repeated by the press, and vibrating on all the air, has gone one brief word that has in it a world of dreadful meaning. War, war. That word is ringing in our ears today. We cannot shut it out. The meaning is on our hearts. We cannot throw off the burden. By example of our godly ancestry, our old Puritan worthies of the New England pulpit who consecrated the banners and baptized the swords and blessed the soldier in the ancient fight for freedom, and sometimes went before him to the field, as on the green sward of Lexington on that April day long ago. Their descendants in the pulpit cannot be true to God in the discharge of their sacred functions unless they are true to their country. And because, for one, I believe there is no duty for the Christian pastor so sacred today as to seek to swell and steady to guide the currents of patriotic self-devotion. Very likely some of you will judge otherwise. I am indifferent to the judgments of my fellow men, but I think and believe I must speak. The blow that has been struck has been delivered against the breast of the national government. The question is, the only pertinent question, what has the general government done to injure or offend one or 7 states of the South? And that question cannot be answered. It will go down the stream of history unanswered and unanswerable. Not one right has been trampled on, not one immunity withheld, not one privilege denied, not one liberty infringed, and not even a solitary interest threatened. If the issue were with Northern freemen as individuals, it could not be successfully maintained that the South had ever suffered any wrong. If any right in this land is sacred and universal, it is the right of free discussion, and the exercise of this right is the extent of Northern sinning. We have thought and felt and believed and have therefore spoken, but we have obeyed the laws. We have kept the Constitution, only contending that it should be interpreted as the fathers framed it. And now, what have we to do? We have, first of all, to let it be known where we stand, to come out every man from his silence and his seclusion and express his sympathy for the government and take sides. If he is a patriot with the Union and the laws of the land, and here, thank God, the response of 20 millions of hearts outruns all exhortation, least of all is it needed in these streets and homes that any prophet urge his fellow men to show which cause they espouse. There was with the patriotic majorities of our northern cities and states a long and ominous silence between the incoming of the present administration, Abraham Lincoln, and this hour of awakening. It seemed a dull and strange apathy. It was mysterious and unintelligible. No man could fathom it. What lay beneath this calm? What did this utter blank of expression portend? Some thought it meant distrust of the government and its policy. Some supposed it to be a wide popular reaction from the views that had won a popular victory. Some saw it in disappointment, chagrin, and discontent. Some, and there were not a few, interpreted it as a sympathy with the Southern uprising. Men began to feel that the sentiment of loyalty was wanting to American hearts, that ours was a style of government that could not inspire that sentiment, that we were sensitive for state rights, that we were proud of our power and prosperity, that we loved and worshiped our golden idols, money, but that the spirit of chivalrous and loyal devotion to our unromantic, remote, and almost impersonal government had no home in Republican breasts. We know better today. The silence is broken and interpreted. It is not an anti-slavery war we wage, not a sectional war, not a war of conquest and subjugation. It is simply and solely a war for the maintenance of the government and the Constitution. Who will rally to the national flag? Thank God again, there is no need of urgency on this point. I hear the tread of gathering thousands. I see the deep enthusiasm of souls on fire with love and duty toward the common country. I see mothers dismissing their sons with tender benedictions and young wives buckling the sword belt around the forms they leaned upon, and the sisters and sweethearts bidding adieus to the young and brave who may return no more. The streets echo to the soldiers' tread and the strains of martial music, and with God bless you streaming over them like bannered inscriptions, our brothers and our boys go forth to the war. We ought to make the war overwhelming. Not 100,000, but 500,000 of men ought to be in motion. We ought to pour our legions forward. It is mercy now to go strong and strike hard. The grapple has come. Finish it quick and finish it forever. Let this contest need never be renewed. Let it be settled from henceforth in this land that a government has a right to be a government. Let discontent and treason learn that when they stretch out sacrilegious hands to tug at the pillars of the Union and all of constitutional law, that hand shall be stricken down and forever palsied. Let us meet and settle this issue now and bury it so deep in a grave so blood cemented that it shall have to the end of time no resurrection. Let us not be so eager for peace as to heal this hurt slightly. Let the laws go with the armies. Hang traitors. So there you have Reverend Andrew Stone's oration, his discourse, his sermon on April 21st, 1861, just days after the bombardment of Sumter and a couple of days after troops from his home state's 6th Infantry marched through Baltimore and were attacked by secessionists. All of this rousing the ire of the Northern population, the transformation of Stone from someone who was putting out the idea that maybe we should go in peace and separate. No, he definitely, as you hear from these words, had turned to war, and a fast, quick war with a lot of participants. I've included a link to the entire sermon, all 24 pages of it, if you'd like to give it a read. You may be wondering what became of Stone. Well, the uniform here tells you everything you need to know. He wound up putting his actions behind his words. He went on to serve as chaplain of the 45th Massachusetts Infantry. He survived the war and lived a long life until 1892, dying at age 76. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.